Hi all, good morning or good evening, depending on where you're all located. Thank you for joining our Power BI webinar, and my name is Deepak Shankar. I'm a community manager within the Microsoft Business Application Group, and today we have Jin, an MVP with us, who will walk us through the artificial intelligence for the business through Power BI features. And we have Jen with us. Hey Jen, it's all yours now.
Hello there. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, and thank you Microsoft for hosting for this session. So my name is Jen Stirrup, and this is what I look like. You can see that I like pink. So my background originally was artificial intelligence, and then I moved into business intelligence when AI became no more trendy. But now we find artificial intelligence is exciting again. So for the first time, I am finally cool, which has never happened before. So being a geek is a good thing. So here's my details if people want to get in touch with me. And I blog over at jenstirrup.com and datarelish.com. So these are my details if anyone wants to get in touch. So the reason I wanted to talk about this topic is it's actually really important that organisations understand what AI is, and it's also very good for them to understand how it can help their business. And executives are actually starting to work out that AI can produce real value to their organisations. And this is what we see in the sphere of Power BI. Very fortunately, Microsoft are leveraging artificial intelligence in many different ways in Power BI. And in this session, what I'd like to do is share with you some of the exciting ways that artificial intelligence can be used in Power BI. It's a great way to get started with AI in your organisation. It's really used in very many organisations, and you may be organisations that you may not think would use it. So here's an article from ZNet, and you can see here that Uber are using Microsoft Cognitive Services to reduce fraud and also to give riders an extra sense of security by using face recognition. Now, I think that's personally really amazing. And as a female as a female who uses Uber quite a bit, it gives me a certain sense of security. And I love that Microsoft are involved in this initiative. So AI is in all sorts of places that you don't even expect it. It's even in your smartphones, which really means that you've got a tiny piece of AI with you wherever you go. Isn't that amazing? Now, it wasn't always like this. Now, this is called Amara's law, and you may recognise this. It looks quite similar to the Gartner hype cycle, which is basically based on this, really. So, Roy Amara stated something called Amara's law, which says that we tend to overestimate the effect of a technology in the short run, and we underestimate the effect in the long run. Now, we saw this originally with the internet. First of all, the internet was considered to do everything fantastic. Everyone thought, wow, it's going to cure cancer and it's going to send us to the moon. It's going to be amazing. And then a few things happened. First of all, the internet bubble burst, and then people ran into Y2K problems. So people got really disappointed with the internet. But then people started to understand that in the longer term, there was actually much more use for the internet than they'd previously thought. So Amara's law is something that can also be applied to artificial intelligence. At the moment, I think we're in the peak of inflated expectations. When people think of artificial intelligence, they tend to think of Terminator, or they think of Skynet. Now, that's called artificial general intelligence, or AGI. Now, we are talking here about artificial narrow intelligence, where we expect artificial intelligence to be good at one thing and one thing only. Think of Cortana, for example, Microsoft's assistant. Cortana is very good at understanding what we say, but right now she's not making us a cup of tea, which is really what all we want. So what is artificial intelligence and why is it useful? Well, it's surprisingly useful for lots of things. It can be useful in very small ways and in very large ways. And I'd like to share with you some examples where I've used artificial intelligence and used it for production. So some of my customers will build chatbots. We've all seen chatbots. They're super easy to build using Microsoft Azure. And the great thing is we can use Power BI in order to get the findings and the results and the data back out again. So really by having everything in Azure, we have a fantastic way of streamlining our efforts to get into artificial intelligence. And we can start to prove the benefits by using Power BI. So how does this actually work? And what we actually have is a framework I like to call the 8 C's of artificial intelligence. Now we can see they're all listed here, and I'm just doing a very quick count to make sure I have actually got 8, because sometimes I think I may not have, but I can see the 8 are here. And what I'm looking for actually is a way of trying to make sure that customers don't forget things when they are starting to think about artificial intelligence. And so I'm trying to help people to have a 360 view of the sort of things that they might have to think about when they think about artificial intelligence. The really fantastic thing is that Power BI can help you to understand your business intelligence, and you can use the artificial intelligence as well in order to try and understand better your customers, can understand better how you can use your findings and your data to understand the competition better. It also means that you can start to understand how to reduce costs. And the reason you can do that is by examining carefully what the data is actually telling you. And you can do that by using Power BI for your business intelligence, also to understand where you are and where you'd like to be as well. So here's a number of ways that we can actually help artificial intelligence to be part of your organization. So the first thing, sometimes people will come and find different ways of trying to build a business case for artificial intelligence. Now, when we have artificial intelligence as part of Power BI, that really gives us a low barrier to entry when we start to build artificial intelligence systems. Because what we can do is we can actually get a hold of our data and help build a business case to help us with understanding our data and helping us to get Power BI to be part of the story of artificial intelligence in the organisation. So the way that people often build a business case is to try and solve a problem across the organisation which impacts quite a few businesses. For example, what we can do is we can have a think about how we can organise our data, get good business intelligence in place, and then have artificial intelligence after that. Now, often you can do that by trying to solve a problem which is part of the organisation that nobody seems to want to own. In data particularly, we have something called the bystander impact, and what we can do is we can actually try and own a piece of that problem by, say, for example, doing something that benefits a lot of people across the organisation. And what we can do is take an example where you have got dirty data in the organisation. What you can do is expose that dirty data and take it and deal with it as a real problem in your organisation that impacts a lot of people. And bit by bit, you can start to clean your data, and you can use the reason for cleaning your data and you can move it forward by taking the data and starting to examine how dirty the data is, and then that helps you to build a stronger business case for artificial intelligence in your organisation. When you start to clean the data, people start to feel the benefit, and that means you start to get more of a success in the organisation. What you have to do is use a framework like Gartner's Business Intelligence Competency Framework. You can use that to help build a virtual team that will help take your data and help you to have some success with it by having many different lenses on it. And by proving small, achievable, successful steps, you're more likely to win a business case for using artificial intelligence. Now, what you need to do is to look for the right artificial intelligence capabilities to help you to meet the business challenges. So how do we do that? Well, when we look at Power BI, what we can do is we can use artificial intelligence in many different ways. For example, we can use some of the analytics in order to understand the data better. Or what we can do is we can actually use artificial intelligence in Power BI Premium in order to understand our data better. In this session, what we will do is we will have a demo of those capabilities, and I hope you'll find it as exciting as I do. So when we start to think about artificial intelligence, how do we know what problem we can actually tackle? What we have to do is think about our 8Cs again and think about our customers. What are your competitors doing that means that they are being more successful with their data than you are? And one way that you need to move forward and think about your customers differently is to adapt. Adapt to the environment, and you can do that by really listening to your data. And that will help you clearly to adapt if you listen to your customers and listen to the voice of the customer in your data. You can only do that if you have good business intelligence first, though. So once we understand our customers a bit better by listening to their voice in the organisation, we can start to listen to what the competition are doing as well. What you can do, and some of my customers do this, is they will actually go onto the competitor's website and see what data they are collecting, and they will try and understand better where the differences are, what data are the competitors collecting that they are not collecting, and then they can try and work out exactly where the differences are and what they might be doing with that data. Artificial intelligence can help you to do that by helping you to understand the data better using things like predictive analytics or using human-inspired thinking when looking at your data. So first of all, one of the 8Cs is to think about getting the customers first and thinking about how they actually could be served by artificial intelligence. Customers tend to get excited by new technology. We tend to find people like new things. So why not have a refresh of your website and start to think about the chat bots or something in your website? Now, sometimes what you can do is decide how externally facing you want your AI efforts to be. If you don't want to take much risk, why not serve your artificial intelligence customers first internally by using it internally, using things like natural language processing, and then when you have some confidence in it, start to use external customers as well, and maybe roll out to smaller groups first. You don't have to go all in and use AI for everything. You start small first, and you can try it out in smaller groups of people. Capitalize and optimize. So what you can do is look for opportunities in the market. They're not always the obvious ones either. So I would have a think about opportunities that are there. Now, it's not good enough just to slap AI as a label on something and expect it to work. You absolutely have to have a very, very well built business plan, but also a purpose as well. If you're spending a long time saying that something has got AI on it and not explaining the problems that it solves and how it will save people money, then you can't be sure you're going to be successful with AI because the business principles are not in place first. So as we discussed, look for the competition and see what other people are doing with their data. After all, sometimes it's best to be first. Also, be creative. There's nothing wrong with having with your data. I don't know if you know this, but Play-Doh and Sweet and Low were both invented by accident. Now, Play-Doh is actually invented by a gentleman who wanted to invent something like white tack that would stick to the wall, and he failed miserably at it. So he was going to throw out all of this dough stuff when his wife looked at it and said, "Hey, the kids in kindergarten might really like that. Can I take it into class?" So since he was going to throw it out anyway, he said, "Yes, oh, okay, that's fine." So his wife took the dough into kindergarten and the children loved it. Play-Doh is now a multi-million-dollar business throughout the world, and it was actually invented by accident. So even because you failed at something, you still might learn 10 things along the way, and you might even be more successful than you would have been initially. So there's nothing wrong with being creative with your data. Why not give people your Play-Doh moment with their Power BI? Another thing to think about is your costs. How can you dial down your costs and you can increase your savings? One thing to do is look at automating. Efforts at automating, if you're not sure about automating things, use it internally first. Use it for your internal customers. A great place to get started is Microsoft Power Automate. It has some great ways of automating processes throughout the organization. Why not start with really simple? Why not use it to update SharePoint lists and send some data somewhere? Then you can see that data in Power BI. So there's plenty of opportunities for you to increase productivity and save costs throughout the organisation. Challenges. Solve a problem. Now that may sound easier because you think, well, I'll just find any old challenge, but it has to have a real business problem with a real business resolution. And if you can manage to think properly about what your customers actually need from you, then you can start to find challenges that you solve for them. Calculate. Now, it's quite difficult sometimes. People confuse value and cost. And sometimes I hear this with Power BI. People will say things like, well, it's going to take me 5 days to create a data source and then automate it using Power BI. So I'm not going to do that because it's going to cost me 5 days of my time. But you have to think about the value that it's going to generate for you instead. So if it's going to generate real business value, that's harder to calculate. But you can start to calculate it more easily in terms of productivity. Recognition. Now, there's many different ways that you can get started with artificial intelligence, and using Power BI is a great way to get started, but there's also other functionality that you have to code more. For example, Microsoft Cognitive Services is a great way to get started as well. And what you can do is use it for some really exciting things like facial recognition. And we saw earlier that Uber are already doing this. So how can you get started? Well, Microsoft have done this great methodology called the Data Science Team Process. You may be familiar with the CRISP DM methodology as well. The CRISP DM gives you some great documentation to get started, but it's not been updated for some period of time, and it doesn't reflect some of the challenges that you might see in big data architecture and delivery. But Microsoft have taken elements of it and updated it to the data team process. So if you're interested in learning in a process to get started, I recommend you have a look at the data science team process and have a Bing search around for that. So now we have talked enough and we have PowerPointed enough, as much as we love PowerPoint. What I want to do is I say thank you for listening, but now I really want to show you what things look like in Power BI. So why don't we have a quick look? So here is Power BI, and what I do have is Power BI Premium, and this is actually one of the premier solutions provided by Microsoft, and it's based in Microsoft Azure. So what I like about Power BI Premium in particular is that it's aimed at large enterprises who really need dedicated hardware in the cloud. And what I do see is a premium solving problems because people that are working in large enterprises sometimes just need that extra support from the cloud. Azure is no longer a big USB stick in the sky that's storing all of your data. You can do some fantastic things with your data. And what we can do is use Power BI in order to analyze our data, but also use it for artificial intelligence as well. So what we see here, first of all, we know that this is a Microsoft premium workspace because it has this diamond that you can see just here. It appears just there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you first of all how we can get our data into Power BI, and to do that I'm going to use this workspace here, and it's called Make Your Data Work. And this portal has got a small diamond again just here, and this diamond tells us this is a premium workspace. So I'm going to click on that. And what we see here is we have actually got a number of dashboards already built, and we're not going to dive into those just now. What I'd like to do is first of all is show you some of the data flows that we have already in here. Now, what we see with the data flow is basically at its heart a way of moving data around and getting it into a good shape so it's better for analysis later on in the process. When we want to use data for business intelligence or artificial intelligence, we want to use it and have it in a rectangular shape. Because Power BI and most reporting technologies such as Excel, for example, or reporting services work better when we have rectangular data sources. Those can be in dimensional formats, of course, but they work better with rows and columns. So I've got a number of data flows here, and what I'd like to do is show you this one here. Let's have a look. So what we have here is I've taken a lot of data, and now I've built some models here previously, but we'll come back to those. I've got the query here, and this is what the data looks like at its heart. So this is the metadata about the data that we are looking at. Now the purpose of this data is what we're trying to do is predict whether somebody will purchase something from an online shop or not. So the data has various characteristics of that individual's web visit. And then what we're trying to do is predict the revenue value here. And this revenue value is a true or a false. That really indicates, did the person buy something or didn't they? Now, before we move much further, I want to show you, we have got Power BI. We've got a tutorial for this Power BI tutorial for AI, and it's done by one of the Power BI team. So I want to direct you to that. And the reason I want to do that is so that you've got the opportunity to try this out yourself. So what we have here is creating machine learning models in Power BI. So I'm going to change the tutorial a little bit. I'm not going to follow it exactly, but I wanted to give you a good reference so that you could go and try this yourself. So what we're going to do is create machine learning models in Power BI. And if you're looking for the tutorial, that's your tutorial itself. It's down the bottom here. So please give this a twirl and let me know how you get on. I'm sure you can already find it if you have a Bing search for it. Now here is the data that we're going to use. Now I do have to say it doesn't look pretty, and understand that. The headings are here, and there is our revenue column that we're going to use, and here. And here's the data itself. Now, if you are a Power BI fan, I'm absolutely sure that you have struggled with CSV files like this one that really aren't very pretty. So that's what the data actually looks like. So I'm just going to take that URL. I can use that later. So what we've got here is what the data actually looks like when we see it in Power BI. That's what the query looks like. But what we could do is, since I've built one already, is I can actually edit what the query looks like. There's a number of actions here, and it's easy to miss them, but please don't. You could edit the query here, or we've got this tiny brain here, and this is where we apply the artificial intelligence model to the data that we found. We can also change the settings if we like. This icon here, and we can also refresh the data flow as well, and that's what that's for. So why don't we edit, and then we can go in and see what the data looks like. I uploaded this earlier, simply just to save time. I'm sure you spend enough time in yourself watching data loading, and I'm sure you don't want to watch any more of it. Everybody wants the data right away and right now, because that's how it works. So what we have here is Power Query, our get and form, you may want to call it. I am really pleased to see that Power Query is part of the data flow process. I think it's a great way of managing the data that we see. And what we can see here is the columns have been nicely divided up. So we've got administrative column, we've also got the bounce rates, for example, and right at the very end, what we do have is we have two columns. Now the weekend column indicates if it was a weekend or not when the visit took place, or what we can do is look at the revenue column. Now the revenue column is the thing that we are trying to predict. Did someone buy something or not? What we can do, and sometimes people miss this, is we can actually change the formats of the data. And we do that by clicking this tiny button here. And I'm just pointing that out because sometimes I'm working with customers and they don't always see that. So I think it's just important that you can actually see that and you know where it is. So what I've got is a revenue column. I could also do some interesting things. I could reduce the rows if I want. I can transform the table. What we've got here, this tells us the visitor type, for example, if it's a returning visitor or a new visitor. This tells us about the browser as well, and the operating system, and also the month. So we can do some cool things by analysing this data. We might want to ask ourselves some questions such as, did people buy more as it led up to the holiday season in November and December, with all the holidays that take place at this time of year, for example? We've also got a wonderful Power Query feature, which we have in Power BI, we have in data flows as well. We can undo if we want to. And we can also rename columns as well. Now, I know it's only a small thing, but rename is not next to delete. Now, for me, that's fantastic because I can't tell you how many times I've gone to rename something in Excel or Power BI and accidentally deleted something and had to frantically undo. So I'm very, very happy. Personal thank you from me because I've got fat fingers and I will do stuff like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save and close the data flow. So it says it's got an error, so we can go to the query. So let's take a look. So it's one talking about combining data sources. So I'm just going to continue with that. Just going to think about it. So this time I've got 4 warnings. So let's have a look. Try and save and close. It's validating. Watching a spinny thing. We've got less warnings, so it's happier. That's good. Sometimes a different error message can be progress. And all the warnings have gone. We saw that because they've disappeared from down here, so that's awesome. Maybe it should play a tune when it's doing this. What do you think? So now we have validated the query and it's thinking about it. What we could do if you wanted actually is while that's working, I can take the CSV file and I could load it into Power BI straight away because we all love Power BI. And we could play with it in there if we like. And we could load the CSV file straight in and play with it straight in Power BI. That would be good business intelligence. What we're trying to do in Power BI Premium is we are hoping to build a data flow and then use artificial intelligence on that data flow. Now the query is happier now. We have cleared all of the warnings. So what I can do is start to apply an ML model. And I've already created one previously, but I'm going to do another one again so you can see the process. So the first thing it's wanting to know is the name of the query used. Now I want to use the query because that's the one that's actually owning the data. That's the one that's pulling the data. Now this is where it's got it a bit wrong. It's hit on the first column, which is whether it wants to predict whether something is a weekend or not. That's not necessarily what we want. We want to predict the revenue. So let's do that. So this time we are using the rest of the characteristics to understand whether someone is going to make a purchase based on various characteristics. So I'm going to click on next. I'm just going to think about it. So we're going to select revenue because that's what we care about. But we're interested in the revenue where somebody actually bought something. We're not interested in the nulls where people do not buy anything. So now that that's in place, I'm going to hit true again. It's going to give us binary prediction. And what that means is it's going to aim at whether a yes or a no answer. And it's going to try and use these characteristics in order to understand, does someone buy something or not? Binary is just basically yes or no. And regression is like a score, which gives us a score of whether someone is likely to buy something or not. So what we see here, just worth pointing out, is that the revenue field, the outcome field, is just here. That's the one that we're interested in. And these are the ones, it's done some analysis for us, and some of the fields have been shown to have a low correlation with revenue, so those have been dropped. So I'm going to click on next, and I'm going to give it the model name. So let's call it, going to call it online shopping. Now you can train your data over a period of time. So because it's a quick session, I'm just going to use 5 minutes and I'm going to save and train. So Power BI is going to call artificial intelligence, and what it's going to do is try and do some binary regression on the data. It's going to try and predict whether someone's going to buy something or not. So what we can do in the meantime is we could import the original CSV file and see how that goes. So I'm going to do get data, and I'm going to do more so we can look at the data. So we could go for CSV file. I'm going to connect. It's going to ask us to get the data. So it's going to download the data for us from GitHub, and it's going to make a connection. So what this gives us is just an opportunity to do some business intelligence on the data as well. So artificial intelligence and business intelligence in the same tool is a fantastic thing. And this is what's great about Power BI. We've got the ability to play with the data in Power BI while it's using artificial intelligence. So now the data has been loaded, and we can see at the right-hand side all of the fields available to us. So let's explore the data a little bit. We've got the revenue first of all. So how much money did they actually make? Let's have a look. So the revenue is shown as true and false, and there's nulls in there as well. So what we can do is we can examine that by region, for example. Region is by number. And what that means is we have got a way of determining the region is done by number. So what we want to do is delete that. And then what I want to do is with the region is do some further analysis in that. So I'm going to put in month as well. So month, unfortunately, is being exposed by date here in alphabetical order rather than the chronological order that we are expecting. So what I'm interested in is revenue. So what we have there is we can see there's lots of trues and falses, and we would expect that. Now with the month data, obviously that's not a good way to sort the data. So what we could do instead is import some more data and make a date dimension so that we can actually understand better how the data hangs together. So what we could do is add in some more information, such as the information duration. So this is letting us know how much time people spent on the website. I'm just going to delete that. And we could look at operating systems as well. So we can look and see if there's a relationship there between operating system, for example, and say the weekend. Get false and true, whether something is a weekend or not by operating system. So it's just some interesting things that we could look at. So we could start to look at the Power BI with the data. Now what we could do just with this simple graph is use artificial intelligence here as well. So what I've done is I've right-clicked on the graph, and what we can do is use this feature called an Analyze. Now this is an amazing feature because it takes a very simple data source like this, and what it's going to do is going to find out where this distribution is different. It's going to tell us something about the data. So it didn't find any insights, but the fact is that what we can do is see if there's any other patterns in the data that we can try and see if we can get any insights from. So let's remove that. And what we could do instead is say we take visitor type, and then say we add in revenue. And then we could add in a number as well, for example, exit rates, try and understand how many people bounced away from the website. So we can see returning visitors, there's quite a high range of exit rates just there. I hope you can see that. We can dial in and see what that looks like. So the number of returning visitors who never bought anything, and there was quite a high number of exit rates there. So intuitively that makes common sense. The data is worked out like that. So why don't we right click in this one? This time we don't have Analyze available to us here, but what we could do is say I remove revenue and then I make a chart. Let's see if we can get Analyze back again, and there it is. So let's find out if there's any insights to be had from this time. So there's no insights here, but at least we can try and find out if we've actually managed to get some. So while Power BI is analysing the data using artificial intelligence, why don't we check in with the Power BI portal and see how well it's doing. So we've got a notification here, which is basically telling us we can use Power BI on the mobile. Remember to download that, it's lots of fun. So we've got no other notifications. So I'm just going to have a quick look at our data flow, and what we see here at the right hand side is that Power BI is actually refreshing. Although it's hidden because I've zoomed in, it actually appears just right here. So the refresh is still in progress. So what I'd like to do is then we can go back into Power BI and find some other examples of data today. So let's look at some of the dashboard and a day reports. We've got a copy here. We'll find some analysis here while we're waiting for the AI model to be trained. I remember back in the day building big systems, and the data took such a long time in order to be processed. It really was a matter of leaving it overnight. So we're very lucky we don't have to do that anymore. 5 minutes is not a long time. So what I've got here is just some analytics. This is one of the default samples that we get with Power BI. You can download this one. So in this particular example, what we've got here is revenue by month and manufacturer. So what we could do is right click here, and we can copy the visual if we like. We can show the data. We've also got a chart here. We've also got percentage growth by manufacturer. And when we right click in that one, we can see where the distribution is different. So this time, Power BI is running an analysis which is inspired to try and help us to identify where the data might be different in some ways. These are great hypotheses in order to follow up. So in this sample data set, it's got some suggestions about why the data is the way it is. So what it says here is we've got some variation. We have a very slight increase in data throughout the years. So 2016 has 17.7% of records, and that most affects the distribution, maybe because there's slightly more in that year than in other years. So if we liked that one, we could hit a like, which I would do. And if we want, what we could do is add it to the page, which is a great thing. So I can add it to the page and then put it somewhere else. I'll put it down there just now. I can add it to another dashboard later. And then we've got some more interesting data here. Now, Power BI has already done this itself. I didn't do anything other than hit Analyze. And it's given us some good suggestions to look at the data. And what we see here is that the segment is potentially causing some differences in the data. So productivity, for example, has got 35.3% of records, And what we've got is the moderation has got 10%, and select, for example, doesn't have as much records, and that can affect the distribution of the data. So we can start to play with the data, and we can see here, when we start to look at moderation, for example, there are way more records in there. So we'd have to think about different ways to skew or to rearrange or think about the bias in the data. We're already introducing bias in the data by having data points for this particular segment than for others. We can also think about category as well. So with this particular website, we can see that rural has got 39% of records, and youth only has 3.2% of records. So we could perhaps use the SMOT algorithm in order to try and inflate the records that are of a lower proportion and deflate the records which have a higher proportion. So it's really cool, I think. What we can do is play around with the data, and it gives us some insights and things to follow up. So there's quite a few there. This is the one it generated earlier. So I added that one to the page. So all I'm going to do is delete that, and then I can move it somewhere else and put it there. So it's really wonderful because we can start to use Power BI, and we can use it in such a way where we are creating lots of charts with very little effort. So when we click on this chart, another way that we can use artificial intelligence is to use the Ask a Question feature. So what this is going to do is it's going to help us to ask a question about the data using natural language processing. So what I want to see is show me top sales, show me top competitors. That sounds a good one. So let's go for that. So when we look at this chart, I'm just going to move it. In fact, I will cut it so it goes somewhere else. I'm going to cut it from there, and I'm going to put it here. And then we've got a list of what the top competitors look like. So we can see our top competitor are these four here. And that's quite cute because that allows us to perhaps focus our business efforts in understanding more about what they're doing with their data, and that in turn will impact our artificial intelligence strategy. So let's go back to the AI portal and see how it's doing. So according to this, the refresh is still in progress. And what I'm going to do is refresh the page and see how it's going. So fortunately, I've got one I did earlier, so I want to show you that one. What we can see here is that, first of all, the data has been split into a training set and a test set. What that means is a chunk of the data has been used for training the model and then for testing the model afterwards. So when we look at our test training set, what we can do is we can have a quick look to see how that looks. And what we can do is have a quick look at editing the entry, and we can see that this now generates Power BI. And what we've got here is we could change some of that if we wanted to. We may not want to, but at least we can get access to the underlying data. So I'm just going to cancel that. What this gives us as well is a flag to identify that this data is actually training data. So let's see what it looks like for test data as well. For the testing data that we see here, we've got some additional metrics in columns that we did not have earlier. So what we can see here is that there's a flag being introduced to show that whether this is training data or not. And we have got the outcome, whether the person was predicted to have bought something or not. And we've also got the score as well. I explained earlier that binary is a scoring algorithm, and that's the results that are popped in there. And it's got an explanation as well. Now that's important because under the GDPR rules, people have the right to be forgotten. We talk a lot about that, but they also have the right to explainability as well. And people don't always understand that within the GDPR framework, people have the ability to go and actually ask how the algorithms came to the conclusion and get a reasonable answer from the organisation on how that was generated. So I don't think people understand or are aware that they can do that. I think it's something that's going to start to hit people, that they can do it. And the nice thing about that is that we're prepared and ready because we have some explainability in here. So what we can do now is the description. We could add in a description if we wanted. Then we can double check on this. And when we look in Power Query here, what we can see here is this will give us the results of our analysis. So we can get data and it's still loading, it says over here. So when we start to look at the data, we can start to see here we've got the prediction explanation, we've got the prediction score, and we've got the outcome here. So that allows us to understand this is the training data, it's not training data, and we have got the revenue, the outcome, and then the revenue outcome that the algorithm suspected would be the outcome. So this would be the actual, and this would be the predicted outcome. So what we can do is we could save and close that data and do some further analysis on it. We could look at AI insights as well, and this will give us a dialog box which will start to give us more opportunities. So if I was using cognitive services here and I had perhaps set up a sentiment score using cognitive services, then I could go and call that AI model in there. We're not going to do that today. I'm just going to leave that with you in order to do some further exploration on your own. So what I've got here is I'm going to save and close that. So the output has been validated. So validating the output just there. It's thinking about it. So while that's thinking about it, we can have a look here for some more fun using Ask a Question. So show me. What we could do is if we just type in the word top, it's got top competitors, top customers. Let's try that and see what happens. Show me my sales by country. And then we can use that one. Or sales by country, I'll take that, that's fine. So we could add this in as well. So it's really nice because although Power BI is really easy to use, we've got all these formulae here at the right hand side. What we do have is the ability to create charts simply by typing in a few words, and that's great. So what we could do is add that one to the page. So that would be a Q&A result turned into standard visual, and there it goes. Now Power BI has created that for us, and then what we could do is add in some extra metrics, such as say product. We could add that in. We could add a product into the legend or maybe category, so let's do that. And that starts to tell us something about the data. So we can see here just some interesting things with the data, and I haven't actually done any typing. I've typed in a few words, it's come up with something really cool. And the artificial intelligence has been used here in order to help you generate the chart, so it's pretty exciting. So let's see, our system is back to the Power BI portal. So what we could do then is we could use that in Power BI. So what we can do is look at machine learning models, and this is the one that we are been using. So what we could do is add in an ML model here, and that will take us back to the one we had. So here's one that I did earlier. This is the one we were just using. So we've got some cool things in here. I could rerun it again. I could view the training report, so let's do that. We talked earlier about explainability in GDPR, and this will generate a training report for us. So the training report is just taking a little bit of time, but it will generate the explainability of the algorithm, which is really important when we start to think about what customers expect from us. Because if customers cannot trust you with their data, they won't buy with you, or they will engage with you less. So that's something very carefully people need to think about. So it says check back in 10 minutes. We're going to leave that here. But I'll see I should have one that I did earlier. So let's have a look at this one. Checking the training report. So we're just going to save and apply that. It's going to save changes. So go to the data flows and then go back to this data flow here. Then look at the machine learning models. And then I'm going to look at prediction. So that might take some time. So what I'll do is I will quickly search for training report Power BI. So what you can do, I'll point you to a blog post for that. So if you keep an eye on the Microsoft Power BI blog post, what you can see is you can start to look at some of the new features and things that the Power BI team are sharing with the world. So you can look forward to that. So we've got the latest ones, December 2019. And can translate that. So post from December 2019. So we can look at all sorts of things here. So we've got Power BI Premium and Analysis Services, some cool news there. So I'm just going to go back and look very quickly at the portal to see if it's come up with something. Yes, it's got model performance, so that's fantastic. So area under curve is one of these algorithms, is one of these results, and it helps us to understand better how much of the cases did the model cover. Now 94% is obviously a fantastic amount, but it is obviously a demo. So we've got top predictors as well, and that allows us to identify what were the variables that could help to identify whether somebody actually bought something or not. So I'm just going to click on that one. We can see the top predictors. So for some reason, the top predictors was the page values. So in the month of May, with less bounce rates. So that's interesting. So when we look at page values, we can see that, and probably quite intuitively actually, we can see that people who spent more time on the site were more likely to buy something. Okay, that may not be earth-shattering findings, but at least it's confirming what you already suspect. We've also got other metrics as well. So we've got our confusion matrix just here. So many times it was true, and many times it predicted true, but actually got false. So 15% of precision, the records predicted as true that actually likely to be true. That's a measure of confirmation that lets us know how many records were confirmed as correct. And it's also given us cost-benefit analysis as well. So this helps us to identify areas in which we can start to focus on in order to do better with our data. We've also got some other identifiers down here. So we've got the accuracy report, allows us to identify how well the model actually did. So the metric we're interested in here is area under curve. You can see it's done really well. Closer it is to the top left-hand side, distance between here and this part really is the more successful the model is considered to be, the more accurate it is. So we can see the same thing here. And basically this chart maps the false positives against the true positives, and that helps us to identify how many times it was correct. So this is the receiver operating curve, and that allows us to identify the actual performance of the model that's actually achieved. And finally, we've also got training details as well. So how the model was trained. It was trained on a sample of rows, and over 3,000 training rows, and then we have some more information. This relates to the model that we chose earlier, the characteristics that we chose, and then the parameters. Now we've got a donut chart, and this allows us to identify different types of models that we could have used. So it's an ensemble model, so that tells us exactly which are the component parts of that model to achieve what it did. So with that in mind, I will leave you quickly with my details. Oops. So my details are here, so please don't hesitate to get in touch if you have any more questions. And please, please, please keep an eye on the powerbi.com blog, and that will help you to keep up to date with what's happening, particularly in the world of artificial intelligence. I hope you have a great fun when you try to make your data work for you.
Thank you, Jen. It's been a wonderful webinar. So thanks for joining in and presenting a beautiful webinar.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.